Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to Freebeat and welcome to my 2K Q&A. We hit 2,000 subscribers. We're actually over 2,100 subscribers now. But yeah, we hit 2K a little over a week ago, just before the Halloween concert. And I am just absolutely floored. Back in April, I set a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by, I think it was the end of the year. And we have not only exceeded that goal, we've doubled it. And if my math is correct, there's a chance we could hit 3,000 by the end of the year. Again, absolutely insane, completely mind-blowing. I am so grateful to each and every one of you who have subscribed, rang the notification bell, leaving comments, hitting the like and dislike button all over the place. You guys have just been great. I was not expecting any of this to take off like it has. And I know 2,000 isn't really taking off, but compared to where my expectations were, it definitely has taken off, and I am very appreciative of that. My goal is just to keep pushing forward and hopefully turn this into a full-time gig. So thank you guys so very much. Here's to 3,000. Now, I thought it would be fun to celebrate hitting 2,000 subscribers with a Q&A, a question and answer segment. So I asked you guys to give me some questions, and I got quite a few good ones, actually. So yeah, here we go. I figured we'd answer them. Actually, real quick first, when I wrote my Halloween concert, I kind of left a slot open for an OPZ song, something that I could just solo over. And I figured I'd cue that one up and just kind of play it in the background for you guys. I'm going to sync them up later, so I'm going to act and make it look like I'm hitting the play button. So you guys will hear the music because I'll put it in post, but I won't, so that's nice. Here we go. Boop. All right, so first question. Howard Anderson says, tell us about your musical background. First interest and why, first instrument and when, and how I evolved to where I am now. So going back as far as I can remember, I was 2 or 3 years old, and my dad had a record player and a sound system in our family room, and he played a lot of orchestral music. And I remember he was a big fan of like the London Symphony, and he also played like a lot of Mahler, and I remember just hearing a lot of power in that music. I can still remember hearing it to this day. And he'd listen to it pretty loud. Our family room was kind of on its own, away from the rest of the house, so we could kind of blast it without my mom getting too upset. But I just remember feeling the power from that music and feeling really, I guess you could say, I don't know, can a 2 or 3 year old be inspired? Because I think that's what I was feeling. So that was my first kind of exposure to music. And then a few years later, I remember listening to like Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, all the classic Count Basie, all the classic big bands of like the 30s, 40s, and 50s. In fact, I can very distinctly remember hearing In the Mood, and I must have been only like 4 or 5. So I really started falling in love with jazz, and of course, along with jazz usually comes some pretty insane drumming. So I quickly discovered like Gene Krupa and Max Roach, Buddy Rich, Papa Joe, and just I was enthralled with their playing. It was so cool. And then I found out later that when I was like 2 or 3, my mom said I would take the pots and pans out and bang on them in the kitchen, which I think that's just a drummer rite of passage. I think we all did that. So my first real interest, I guess, was jazz music and whatnot. And then in 4th grade, I was able to join band class, where I started playing with a snare drum and a cymbal. I started taking private lessons from my band teacher, which was really cool. He is still one of my friends, almost 30 years later. And yeah, he kind of introduced me to just the Buddy Rich big band, and that started my Buddy Rich phase. The school got a drum set at the end of my 4th grade year. He taught me a couple rock beats and actually let me take it home over the summer break, and that was just, I think, game over for my parents. They knew they weren't coming back from it at that point. So I started just studying all I could from Buddy Rich. This was like 97, 98, so I was able to go online actually and buy a whole bunch of Buddy Rich albums, which was really cool, because you couldn't really find those at Borders or Barnes and Noble. So I was able to get my hands on a bunch of Buddy Rich albums, and just I obsessed over his playing, and I still think he's probably the greatest musician to walk the face of our earth. The stuff he did on a drum set is just remarkable. But I could go on and on about him. But yeah, I got to high school, same music teacher. I guess, yeah, drums were my first instrument. Yeah, there you go. But got to high school, we did a Led Zeppelin tribute concert, and I'd never heard Led Zeppelin before. So that was kind of my first exposure to rock and roll and rock music, and I really, really enjoyed that. Not as much as the jazz stuff, not as much as the Buddy Rich Big Band, but I quickly discovered I really liked how powerful rock music could make you feel. I felt it was very similar to, the power of the Buddy Rich Big Band. So power in music has always been very important to me. And then I discovered Rush. And Rush just completely changed the game for me, because jazz was very improv heavy, Led Zeppelin, there weren't really, in the drum parts anyway, it wasn't really like written out note for note. Rush showed me what could be done when you sat down and looked at music from a scientific perspective. So the way Neil Peart wrote his parts note for note and had a what and a why for everything. Like every little detail, like even why he hit the 18-inch crash cymbal there instead of the 16-inch. Everything was covered. And the same thing in the guitar and the bass parts. They all just came together as one cohesive unit, and that was huge with me. I quickly, just fell in love with Rush, and they became my favorite band. They still are my favorite band. I'm very lucky. I got to see them 5 times. I actually got to briefly meet Neil Peart, and yeah, I could go on and on about them for forever. But from a drummer's perspective and just a musician's perspective, they changed everything for me. They changed the game for me. And Neil's loss earlier this year was just like, you can't say anything about it. It's just, yeah. So after discovering Rush, I formed a progressive rock band, and that went pretty well, about out of high school for about 3 or 4 years. Eventually we kind of broke up there, and I actually stopped playing drums and kind of stopped really doing music at all. I kind of lost sight of where I was going. I didn't really have parental support that much anymore because I'd moved out, and I didn't really have a place to play, and I wound up getting a real job. So yeah, there was about 4 or 5 years where I didn't play, and as things do when we don't fall in love with them, the real job just kind of fizzled out eventually, and I made my way back to music, and yeah, now I'm here. So that's the short version of this story. I actually just tried to film this video about 20 minutes ago, and this opening question took like 20 minutes to answer, so I tried to condense it for you guys. I'll definitely touch on Rush in latter videos though. So Flo W says, have I ever jammed or made a video with all of my gear? No, and the reason being is that I have accumulated so much gear in this past year, and I know it's like nothing compared to what some folks have, but it's still quite a bit of gear. My desk is very small. I have not jammed with all of my gear. That would be a very fun video to attempt though. Maybe I'd put all the gear on the bed and try it that way. I don't know. That would be a very fun video to attempt. Maybe I'll give that one a shot. Minimal Camera says, if you could add MIDI capabilities to anything that I have, what would it be and why? My answer might disappoint some of you. I'm going to pick the Korg Monotron delay, and I know that people have modded it. I'm not sure if there's a MIDI mod there, but being able to play that little synthesizer with a keyboard I think would be really cool. I love the sound of the Monotron delay. It's one of my favorite pieces of gear that I own. I just love the simplicity of it, and I think that that single oscillator sounds absolutely incredible. So being able to play that with a keyboard would be really neat. All my other gear pretty much has MIDI. Pocket operators don't, but I can always sample those and sequence them with the onboard sequencer or play them with something else samples wise. So yeah, I think the Monotron delay. Carlos Martinez asks, what is your favorite pocket operator combo and why? Oh, and he says 2, so favorite 2 combo. And then what are my thoughts on the Teenage Engineering modulars? Let me tackle the latter question there first. I'm not really sure. I have not looked into the Teenage Engineering modular gear. I've watched a couple of reviews. I know it's kind of pricey for what it is, but it's also one of the lowest price points to get into modular, so I'm not sure. Modular is something I'd like to get into at some point, but I have nowhere near enough synthesizer knowledge to get into that right now. Now, as far as my favorite pocket operator combo, just picking 2 of them, I think I would have to pick the PO32 Tonic and the PO20 Arcade. I just think there's a lot you can do between those 2 instruments. I want to say like the Office and the Speak can be really weird, but just from an actual songwriting perspective, the Tonic and the arcade, or the tonic and the KO, depending on what kind of music you want to make. Yeah, it's really hard to beat. There's a lot of value in those two combos right there. I've actually got a video coming out on pocket operator combos and other value gear, and how you can kind of combine them to get a lot more for your dollar, coming out pretty soon. Jordan Mathiasen asks, if you could add any feature or function to the OPZ, what would it be? My answer is a line in or a solo function. Either a line in or solo function, either of those two. I would love if sampling was that easy. I'm talking like a direct 1/8" line in, like a module that's just a line in. I would absolutely love to have that on there, just like the PO33 and 35 have. That would be incredible. And also a solo function, which should be fairly easy for them to implement, but I hate having to mute 7 of the 8 tracks to solo something. So either one of those, I'd be a happy camper. Bike Garrett says, what music / artists / visions have inspired me? Buddy Rich, Rush. Recently I've been listening to a lot of like Big Wild and that kind of more poppy synth stuff. A band called Drew of the Drew is really, they're not around anymore, but also really inspired a lot of my kind of current stuff. So yeah, but Rush, Buddy Rich, those two are the huge ones. Casio SK Strike, when did I start making music and what was my main source of inspiration? I first started like making full songs, I would say, probably in high school. I brought like senior year, once I understood a little more of the piano. And the first way that I kind of approached songwriting for myself personally, because I couldn't come close to what Rush did when it came to actually writing music, but believe it or not, was The Killers. So yeah, that was like the first like stuff I'd play on the piano and then have a drum part over it and ask my friend to have like a bass part going. Was a lot of that was based on like the Hot Fuss album from The Killers. That was also one of my favorite albums in high school. So yeah. Robert Raygun asks, that's a great name, what kind of music do I listen to and what inspired me to go down the synth / electronic route instead of just focusing on playing the drums? That's a really good question. The first half of that, what do I listen to? It's still a lot of Rush and Buddy Rich. I like to keep myself pumped up with that. And like I said, Big Wild and a couple other artists. I'm starting to learn a little more about electronic music. What actually made me go down the synth / electronic route instead of just focusing on playing on the drums was space. So I was living basically with my girlfriend in one tiny little bedroom and did not have any way to really play the drums at all. I was really missing music, and I came across Gar Hoover's video with the PO33 when he made his Godzilla track. And I saw the PO33, and I started looking into all the pocket operators, specifically the 33, and I was like, oh man, that is freaking amazing that there's this little thing that's less than $100 and I can basically write songs on it. So a week later I picked up a PO33, and yeah, all of you have just been sucking me down the synth rabbit hole. So it's all your fault, I guess I could say. And the final question here comes from Eric Wagner, who says, watching your videos, it's clear that you have a strong intuitive understanding of things like rhythm / music theory, etc. Thank you. Especially when I see you think of something, key it in, and it all sounds great. Well, I wouldn't say it sounds great, but I appreciate it. He continues, he says, how does someone develop this? I understand all of the various technical aspects and how to push the buttons and make them do this or that, but I'm still very much a beginner. What would you recommend if you had to start all over in that domain? So again, kind of two questions. So how does someone develop this? I would say pick a song that you really like and just start to reverse engineer it. Pick an instrument that you're comfortable with and just pick a song and just reverse engineer it. Go backwards until you start to learn how all of the parts work together. And after that, it's just a lot of repetition and a lot of practice. Whenever you're bored, instead of watching something on Netflix or something like that, just grab an instrument and start playing with it. Even if it's a pocket operator, or even if you're just on your computer with a Midi controller. It's a lot of practice and a lot of playing. It's a lot of trial and error. And just remember that whether someone else thinks something sounds good or not is irrelevant. It's all up to you. So if you make something that you like, don't get discouraged if someone else says they don't dig it, because it doesn't matter. So yeah, practice, repetition. Repetition is huge, and just developing a basic understanding of what works musically and what does not. Listen to a whole lot of different music and just start to identify things that you enjoy and then reverse engineer them and find out why. The second part of that question, what would you recommend if you had to start all over in that domain? That's a really good question, actually. You know, if I had a computer that could easily run a piece of music software, which, you know, those can be pretty taxing. I only recently got a computer that can run Ableton well. But I would say if you've got a computer that can run it, pick up like a budget MIDI controller. Get like an Arturia Keystep or, you know, any of the great MIDI controllers between like $100, $200. That's a great starting place. A lot of sounds on the computer, a lot you can learn just by watching YouTube tutorials and, you know, and just following along. If not, if you don't have a computer that can run something like that, I would say pick up like one of those cheesy digital like keyboards, like from Casio or Yamaha, like one of those $100 ones that just, it's all the GM sounds, all the general MIDI sounds with the patterns built in, and just start playing. Just develop a simple understanding of chords and how they work with melodies, and listen to the rhythms in there. They might sound cheesy, but all the placement of the notes is legit, and you'll be able to figure out why they work and how they work. That's another big thing too. Just always remember to think about the what and why in anything that you hear or anything that you do. That's a huge step. So there we have it. Those are the questions that you guys asked. I was very thrilled with all of them. They were all really nice questions, and I feel like I was able to cover a wide range of topics, and yeah, that was a lot of fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, go ahead and leave a like on the video. If not, you can leave a dislike. That's okay too. Doesn't hurt my feelings. Just makes me try that much harder next time. Either way, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. Thank you guys so much again for 2,000 subscribers. We'll see you at 3,000. Bye.